Try to remember your second birthday. Go ahead, reach back as far as you can. You'll find a wall, a blank space where the first few years of your life should be, a darkness that no amount of effort can light up. There are photos of you there. People who love you swear it happened, but you remember none of it. You tell yourself you were just too young, but the real answer is far stranger. Those memories were not missing. They were not too faint to form. You made them. You lived those days in full color, laughing, crying, and then your brain did something deliberate. It erased them. Not by accident, on purpose. To understand why, you have to throw out the thing you assume about memory. You think of forgetting as failure. A memory you wanted, gone, lost, a glitch. But what happened in your first years was not a glitch. It was a feature. The same process that wiped your earliest memories is the reason you can think at all. Let's start with what scientists actually know, because the truth is almost unbelievable. Babies are not memoryless. For a long time, people assumed infants simply couldn't form memories, that nothing was recorded because the machine wasn't running yet. That assumption was wrong. The psychologist Carolyn Rovee-Collier proved it with a beautifully simple experiment. She tied a ribbon from a baby's ankle to a colorful mobile hanging above the crib. The babies quickly learned that kicking made the mobile dance. That was the memory. Days later, she brought the mobile back, and the babies kicked immediately, remembering exactly what to do. Some remembered for weeks. These were infants only a few months old. They were forming memories, holding them, acting on them. So the machine was running. You were recording. The footage existed, which makes the disappearance even stranger. Because somewhere between then and now, that footage was deleted, and almost every human on Earth experiences the same erasure. We have a name for it: infantile amnesia. The term was coined over a century ago by Sigmund Freud, who noticed that adults across cultures share this same blank wall, this same missing beginning. For most people, it falls somewhere around the age of 3 or 4. Before that line, almost nothing survives. Here is the question that haunted researchers for decades. If babies can form memories, where do they go? The answer came from the strangest place. Not from psychology, but from the physical growth of the brain itself. And it centers on a small, curved structure deep inside your head called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is your memories recording studio. It is where experiences get bound together into something you can later retrieve, the place where a moment becomes a memory. And in a baby, the hippocampus is not finished. It is under furious construction. This is where the neuroscientist Paul Frankland enters the story. Working with his colleague Sheena Josselyn in Toronto, Frankland studied something called neurogenesis, the birth of brand new neurons. In most of your adult brain, you are not making many new neurons. But in the infant hippocampus, new neurons are being born at a staggering rate. Millions of them, flooding in, wiring themselves into the existing network. And here is the part that rewrites everything. Frankland's research suggested that this explosion of new neurons doesn't just add to the memory system, it disrupts it. Imagine a library where new shelves are being bolted in every single day, where the whole floor plan is constantly redrawn. Every new connection rearranges the ones already there. The memories you formed are still encoded somewhere in the tangle, but the pathway back to them, the route your mind would take to retrieve them, gets paved over, rebuilt, lost. The very thing that makes a baby's brain so extraordinary, its breathtaking capacity to grow and rewire, is the thing that destroys its memories. You couldn't keep the footage because the studio was being rebuilt around it every hour of every day. So your brain made a trade, and it is the most important trade you will ever not remember making. Think about what a baby has to accomplish. In a few short years, you went from a creature that could not hold up its own head to one that could walk, talk, recognize faces, understand that objects exist when hidden, grasp that other people have thoughts different from your own. You learned a language from scratch. You absorbed the rules of an entire culture. No computer we have ever built can learn the way an infant learns. That kind of learning requires a brain that stays soft, plastic, endlessly rewirable. A brain optimized to absorb patterns, not to preserve specific episodes. And you cannot have both at full strength. A brain busy memorizing the exact details of last Tuesday is a brain less free to rebuild itself for next Tuesday. So evolution chose. In your most important years of learning, it prioritized the rewiring over the remembering. It chose to make you smart instead of letting you keep the receipts. The memory researcher Patricia Bauer, who has spent her career studying exactly how childhood memory develops, describes early memory as fragile in a specific way. Young children, she found, actually do form autobiographical memories, but those memories decay far faster than in adults. The forgetting curve in early childhood is brutally steep. The memories are real when they form. They just don't last, because the system holding them is still rebuilding its own foundations. But the rebuilding brain is only half the story. There is a second reason your beginning is sealed away, and it is even more profound. To remember your life, you first have to have a you to remember it happening to. Consider what an autobiographical memory really is. It is not just a recording of an event. It is an event tagged as having happened to me. It needs a sense of self at the center, a narrator, an I that the experience can be hung upon. And that self is not something you are born with. It is built slowly. The understanding that you are a person, separate, continuous, the same you who existed yesterday and will exist tomorrow, comes online gradually in those first years. And it is deeply tied to language. Before you had words, your experiences had no story to be stored in. The psychologists who study this have found that a child's earliest lasting memories tend to appear right around the time they gain the language to describe their world, the ability to say this happened, and then this. And I felt this. Language gives experience a shape it can be filed under. Without the words, without the narrative, without the sense of a self that things happen to, those early days could not be encoded as the kind of memory you can ever consciously return to. They washed through you and kept going. Have you ever wondered why your first real memory is the one it is? That single fragment. A smell, a room, a moment of fear or wonder. That is roughly the spot where the narrator woke up, where the you reading these words first switched on and began keeping a record. Now sit with the strangeness of it. Everything that matters most about who you are was decided in the years you cannot remember. The first time you felt safe or didn't. The face you learned to trust. The sounds that became your mother tongue. The deep patterns of attachment that will shape every relationship you ever have. All of it was laid down in that erased beginning. The foundation poured before you arrived to watch. You are standing on a building whose ground floor you have never seen. You walk through your life on top of years you will never visit again, carrying their consequences in your body and your habits and your fears, with no access to the events themselves. The brain deleted the footage but kept the lesson. It threw away the diary and kept the person the diary made. So when you reach back and hit that wall, that blank where your second birthday should be, you are not failing. You are not broken. You are touching the edge of the most generous thing your brain ever did for you. It gave up its own first memories so that it could become a mind at all. It traded the receipts for the intelligence to one day ask where they went. This is what scientists mean when they say forgetting is not the opposite of memory. It is part of it. A brain that remembered everything would be a brain too rigid to grow. The clean slate was the point. The erasing was the gift. There is something almost tender in that. The version of you that lived those first years gave everything to build you, and then quietly stepped aside, leaving no trace of itself except you. It will never be thanked, because it cannot be remembered. It made you, and then it disappeared into you. Try to remember your second birthday. You still can't. There is still only the wall, but now you know what is behind it. Not nothing, everything. The whole foundation of you, sealed away on purpose by a brain that loved you enough to forget.